race for state Supreme Court igniting statewide. Former Supreme Court Justice Janine Geske standing by for us in just a minute.
So here we sit, 65 days until the primary, the top two candidates advancing to the April general. This is technically a nonpartisan race, right? But it will determine whether conservatives or liberals control the court.
And the big shakeup this past week, Waukesha County Judge Jennifer Darrow, who presided over the Waukesha Parade attack trial, officially launching her campaign. She joins fellow conservative and former state Supreme Court Justice Daniel Kelly, the two liberal candidates, Dane County Judge Everett Mitchell and Milwaukee County Judge Janet Protasewicz, all of them talking with us this past week.
Would you consider yourself a conservative judge?
I would consider myself to be a judicial conservative.
And what do you see the court's role in major policy issues like abortion law and redistricting, Act 10?
Sure. A judge at its core should be someone who interprets the law and applies the law to the facts of the case. I like to say it this way: I want to stay in my lane. My lane as a judge is not policy making. If I want to be a policymaker, then I should be a legislator.
I think this race is getting a lot of attention because depending on how you score the balance from the court right now, it's 4-3 or so in favor of those who understand their obligation is simply to apply the law and not to second guess it or to make it up as they go along. And so with this seat, there is the possibility if a judicial activist were to win, that there would then be an activist majority on the Supreme Court.
Is Justice Hagedorn your or so that you referenced?
That is what people tell me. They are that he is the or so.
How do you think this race is going to play out from a voter's perspective?
I think similar to the last governors and Senate races, Attorney General, you will see big money being spent to help shape the minds of voters, right? To either get them afraid or nervous. That's what I want to make sure the voters don't let political ads dictate your vote. That's not what they're designed to do. They're designed to influence you, but they shouldn't be used to dictate or make your decisions for you. It's really more about giving people a balanced choice rather than having more conservative activists who are already committing in word and deed to follow whatever the agenda might be.
I'm not a partisan right-wing extremist, as I categorize two of my opponents. I'm someone who upholds the Constitution, who follows the rule of law, and the rule of law is critical.
How critical is this? How important is this race?
It's the most critical race that I can think of in my lifetime. So for people who aren't aware, there are 7 seats on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. This seat gives an opportunity for a 4-3 majority of people who I believe really will analyze the law, look at the law, and follow the rule of law as compared to ideologues.
All right, so the 4 candidates. The court currently with a 4-3 conservative majority. Justice Patience Roggensack, a conservative, retiring, setting this stage for what's going to be an intense couple of weeks.
Yeah, with that, our conversation with former state Supreme Court Justice Janine Geske. And so just talk about how big of an influence on this race does Judge Jennifer Darrow entering the race actually have on it?
She has she's had a big impact. It was already going to be a tough race with the 3 judges and Justice Kelly, but now it's going to be a 4-way race, a tough race even for the primary. She obviously received a huge amount of publicity over the Waukesha Parade case and received a lot of praise for it. I think that as people get to know her and her philosophy, some of that notoriety will wear off and they'll take a look at her qualifications as well as everyone else. But it's going to be a tough race, and the conservative movement in the state are going to have their interests divided between the 2 candidates. And it'll be interesting to see how they handle the primary.
Talking about maybe that publicity a little bit and even the national implications of this race, what do you think that we're going to see in terms of the outside influences on what actually happens here in Wisconsin?
I have no doubt that there's going to be millions of dollars put into that race from outside groups. There are groups on both sides of the political spectrum have realized the importance of state courts in looking at particularly legislative enactments, in deciding their constitutionality and whether they're dealing with gerrymandering or abortion or gun issues and all those, people have realized that those decisions are really important. So I'm expecting tens of billions of dollars from outside groups to enter into this race. We're going to be inundated with ads, just like we were during this last race in November. I don't think it's going to be very pretty, which saddens me because it should be a nonpartisan race, but it won't be.
Talking about this being a nonpartisan race and this position being nonpartisan, I'm curious, just based off of your time serving on the state's high court, has the high court become a little bit more polarized since your time, and why do you think that is?
It's more than a little bit. It has become very polarized. I think there's been a combination of the amount of money that it takes to run these races, the fact that groups have injected huge amounts of money into these races, and so candidates have taken almost political positions in running for the court, which is really not what we're supposed to do. It's unfortunate, judges and justices shouldn't be out there saying, you can count on me for and fill in the blank. They're supposed to hear the case, read it, consult with their colleagues, and do a reasoned decision. And it's just become very partisan, and the race is going to look partisan. And everybody's going to describe it about the liberal judge or the conservative justice who's running. And, I think it takes away from the court. I'm hoping that someday we decide to go to an appointed judiciary. It has really deteriorated these races into almost like a legislative race.
I was going to ask, is there a solution to getting away from the partisan politics of a race that is so important here in Wisconsin?
Well, many states have an appointment process, and again, you always have the risk of some politics playing a role, but no number of states have a bipartisan committee that looks at candidates and screens candidates. Ultimately, it's often the governor that makes an appointment. Sometimes the legislature has to confirm, depending on what state. But that would take some of that out, because the committee would be lawyers who are looking at good judges who are going to be fair and impartial, rather than just TV ads about who may be soft on crime, an issue that the Supreme Court doesn't handle, by the way.
Justice Geske, thank you so much for your time and analysis. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, Speaker Voss meets the